Hey, this is Cameron. Welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. In this episode, we're going to plant this blueberry plant in this container. Let's get busy. Blueberry bushes are one of those things that are just so nice. You come in when you see it loaded with fruit. Blueberries are tangy, they're sweet, they're good in so many things. But in Southern California, in order to plant one, you really need to plant one in a container. And in a lot of places, blueberries require a really acidic soil, and most soils are not as acidic as these need. I know that the Pacific Northwest, in areas where there are tons and tons of pine trees, the pine stuff falls down and creates that kind of environment. But this is not pine tree territory. We had, lemon groves and other things are growing here. We had eucalyptus trees. We live kind of almost in a desert here in Southern California. So what we do is we plant these in a container, like what I have here. What I'm doing is I'm essentially going to be today replacing a couple of blueberries. We had 6 blueberries originally. 4 of them failed, and they failed for 2 main reasons. One, they failed because they weren't being fed regularly enough. What happens is in a container, it can't draw from the nutrients and resources in the ground around it. So you've got to feed these really like every month, and I neglected that. The other thing that they need is kind of more regular watering, and a couple of these, the little watering spigot got blocked, and they just sank. Anytime you've got any type of plant in a container, it's going to be more sensitive. It's going to rely more on you to pay attention to it. But we love blueberries so much. We love being able to come out and see some like we do on this. I think this is a, which one is this here? The South Moon Blueberry. We have a pink lemonade blueberry also. And so when I was replacing these, I wanted to make sure that I got some that were going to work in our environment. These are southern Highbush blueberries, and that means that they're able to grow well in our warmer climate. Something that you may not know is that blueberries, even though they're technically self-fruitful, you can get fruit if you have just a single blueberry, but you get way more yield if you have multiple types of blueberries to pollinate each other. So, as you can see here how the soil, which was much higher, has totally over the years just gone down. And we've got this little boysenberry that's hitched a ride in this container. Boysenberry's doing great. Boysenberries are doing great everywhere, even where I don't want them to do great. So I'm going to take and plant this O'Neill blueberry in here. There are a couple of things that I'm going to need to do. Oh, look at that. Hey, Evan, I think I found your gloves, my boy. These got planted too. There you go. So something that I want to need to do is when you're creating a blueberry mix, you're wanting to find something that is a higher acid mix. If you're going to buy something that's bagged, you want stuff that's got like pine needle stuff in it, and like azaleas, I think, are a high acid. So if you get like an azalea mix, that'll often give it the required acidity. What I'm going to use is I'm going to mix this along with some pine needles that I'm going to grab out of my yard, because we do have a pine tree next door to us that drops in our yard. And I'm going to use some of the potting soil that I have, and I'm going to mix this all together to create more volume, but still having that acidity. I also did get a small little pH tester where you take a little soil and you test the pH. So, some things we want to think about when we're planting in here. One, we want the acidity in the soil. Another is we want to make sure that we're going to eventually be able to run irrigation to this in some form, which I have it tied into my drip system. Third, you want to make sure that any container that you have has drainage at the bottom of it. So I already have a number of holes drilled in the bottom of this container. Now, you might be wondering, you can do what type of thing you want to plant in. You can plant either in like a half wine barrel, which is really gorgeous looking. It can be a little bit pricey, but these are these 55-gallon drums that I essentially cut off the bottom third and the top third, and that left kind of a ring in the middle that I just discarded. And these have worked really well. They've been out here, they've not broken down in the sun. So if you're not worried about how it looks, these work really, really well in terms of function, and they're a great value as well. So I'm gonna take out the little things that I see growing in here that I don't want to grow in here, and then we're gonna start creating our mix.
that the is that the knife?
This is the knife. This sensei is great. I love these serrated edges.
You know what they say, you gotta bow to your sensei.
I would bow to the sensei. The sensei deserves it.
Bow to your sensei.
Bow to your sensei.
What is that from?
Oh man.
Do I have to be born like after 1980? After 1990 to get that one?
It's Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, I saw that once.
Yeah.
And enjoyed it 0 times. Oh!
Ew.
Now, how about you do all of it and you have Caleb? Oh, yeah.
Wait, you're throwing dirt at me.
Look at that.
Oh my goodness.
You want a boysenberry?
Look at the roots on that sucker.
No, the sucker on those roots.
Look at the sucker holding that sucker.
Get out of here.
I remember you telling me the first time, he's like, yeah, you know, they're actually a weed in a lot of places, considered a weed.
Yeah. I just laughed, man, when Michelle's dad was like, you're planting these? Up there, they spray them with poison. Here, I'm doing it intentionally. But up there, they can't grow palm trees, and that was the funny thing. There was a little fan palm. He's like, oh, a fan palm growing up in the middle. I pulled it out. He just looked at me like, why would you do that? You have a palm tree growing in your yard. I just couldn't comprehend it. So we've got our pine needles here, our bucket of pine needles. We got this raised bed potting mix, and the reason why I'm going to use this in conjunction with the pine needles and the mix that I already have in here is that this has peat moss, which helps with the acidity and the moisture retention. It also has recycled forest products, and so that oftentimes includes like pine-ish stuff. So what I'm going to be doing is essentially just mixing in and trying to bulk this up. Using like one of those little small hand rakes would be good now, but I'm already up here, and anytime I have to walk down that hill, I go, I got this hand rake right here. This soil here is probably largely depleted, so throwing some good fresh potting mix in here is gonna, look at how, what do they call this? It's like black gold over here.
Making layers?
I'm kind of putting on a layer right now, and then when I put a layer on it, I'm able to mix that layer in. I'm kind of folding it in. So
like a dirt parfait.
It's like a dirt parfait. Yeah, grab a spoon. Once we have this planted in here, I'm going to finish this off with a good little layer of mulch, and I'm going to bring off the top of our mulch layer out here. So that way it helps to protect the soil, keep it from drying out, keep the moisture in there, help to regulate the temperatures. One reason you want to use a larger container if you can help it, especially in a warm climate or a very cold climate, is the more mass you have, it creates a thermal mass. And so that helps to keep a consistent temperature and helps to protect it from those extremes. That's really what you want. You want consistency when it comes to plants. They thrive when they've got a consistent environment and aren't having to protect against these crazy extremes. When we plant this, we're gonna want this planted a little bit high. As I've turned over all of the soil, it has made it airy and light and fluffy, but as water hits it, it's going to settle. And so what we're gonna do is plant a little bit higher, and we're gonna mound some of the soil up against it. And the reason for that is because as this settles, we want there to be as much soil underneath this as possible. You can always add more soil, but it's hard once you've got an established plant to raise it. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna just move some of this stuff to the side, find out where we want our blueberry to be. Blueberry doesn't have to go in any direction because these canes are gonna really be cut down, and after a couple of years they're gonna be totally cut out, so it's gonna grow every which way as opposed to like a tree that you're training up in a very specific way. So that looks probably about right. Maybe once you take this out of here, it's gonna crumble a little bit, and so it's gonna sit a little lower. But you want the stem of this to probably be around even with the top of this. Something I learned compared to the last time I did this. So as you rotate it and you hit this, it allows the soil to kind of break away from the sides of the pot, and it'll come out a little bit more easily. And you want to just carefully guide this out. You want to support the root structure. And anytime you plant, you always want to look at the bottom and you want to see if you've got kind of a swirling of roots, which means it's root bound and it's going to want to continue that pattern. Usually it's a good idea to break some of this up because we want these little feeder roots to be exposed and searching into the soil around it. And so that's what I'm doing by doing this. So now you see these little, I don't know if you can see them, these little tendrils here all poking out. They're going to want to be going and exploring. So sometimes breaking up even the sides of a very sturdy root ball like this can help with that. Don't be surprised when you first plant a tree or any type of plant if it experiences some sort of shock. You know, it's a big deal for this to be taken out of its environment and put in a new one. So if you have a bunch of soil drop, it's a good idea, honestly, to take off any fruit that you see. You could also go and cut off some of the existing foliage and bring it down so that way the root isn't having to support as much of a canopy. Okay, that looks pretty good and exposed. Good start. So let's see. All right, so that's looking, I think, pretty good. Once we water this, it's going to be sitting in the soil pretty good. I'm breaking up kind of the last bits of it up here. I want it to make as much contact with the soil as possible. I'm going to mound this up. Mound all this soil up. I'm going to put in some other potting soil just around it here. All right, so that's looking really good. Something I'm going to do is come over here, and if you look, this entire orchard is full of mulch, but this area in particular right here is where we had the giant mulch pile laid, and so I know that it's extra thick. It's probably about this thick. The bottom parts are starting to break down, so what I'm going to do is with my shovel just go over the top, kind of skim off a layer of good woody mulch to put in this bucket. This is the moment of truth. This is exciting time. Now with blueberries and with like boysenberries and blackberries, those can be put underneath the mulch layer a little bit. Normally with a tree, you keep it away from the trunk, but with these essentially have a crown that comes out of the ground, and so these like to be a little cozier than the other stuff. So the mulch kind of coming right up to the crown is okay. You don't want, 6 inches of it, but it kind of just touching it is okay, just fine. All right, this looks like a happy blueberry. Frankly, if you look at this one compared to its buddy next to it, or even a couple over there, this one I think is set up to get off to a great start. Something you want to definitely do after you've planted your blueberry or anything in a pot or even in the ground is you want to water it in. When you water it in, that allows the soil around the roots to settle in and for those roots to make connection with the soil around them. So that's really, really important. Otherwise, those roots kind of hang out. So watering in after you've planted is really important. Give it a good soak. Hey, I hope this has been helpful to you. Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Busy Gardener where we looked at how to plant a blueberry in a container. What successes have you had with blueberries? Have you done, sometimes you can plant a couple of blueberries in a single container, or perhaps you've planted blueberries in the ground, but you treated the ground around it. Maybe tell me in the comments below, hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, would love for you to do that. If you'd like to see what's going on here, hit the notification bell so you know that a video has been posted. And yeah, what questions have you got? Put them in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Whether you've got one berry plant in your garden or orchard, or 500, till next time, stay busy.